let him raise his son for 5 years. The DNA test he snuck was fatal to our relationship. I never thought he would find out. I really believed that my secret would remain hidden forever and that I'd take it to my grave. But that wasn't the case. He found out that I had been lying to him all this while, and the fallout was fatal. I am filled with regret and fear, and my entire life feels like it has been turned upside down. My husband, John, was a very active person. He wasn't the kind of person who you'd say wasn't romantic. He was romantic from the very beginning, and time never waned the passion that burned between us. He was perfect as a human could be. We got married when we were both just 25 years old, and as loving and wonderful as our marriage felt, we didn't have any children in the first 3 years of our marriage, and as someone who always wanted children, it was a matter of worry to me. My husband would always tell me not to worry about it so much, that when the time comes, we'd have our child. I found his calmness about the matter very annoying. I thought he did not understand how I was feeling. I had wanted a complete family for as long as I can remember, and when I finally got a husband, I couldn't get a child. I was angry, impatient and angry. What was the right time? Who determined when the right time was? I wanted it all, and I wanted it as soon as possible. I even ran tests to be sure nothing was wrong with me. I dragged John to the hospital, despite his reluctance, and the doctor said John was perfect. It wasn't our fault either. The doctor advised us to have planned intimate moments around my fertility periods, which would help me get pregnant easier. And so that's what I did. My husband loved every part of me, so he enjoyed every moment. We kept trying for the better part of an entire year, but nothing worked. Every time I had a pregnancy test, it always came back negative. I wasn't pregnant. And each time I ran a test, my heart sank even deeper. I was getting depressed, and before I knew it, my desperation for a child began sucking the joy out of my marriage. I was unhappy with my life, with John, with even myself. Nothing tasted as good anymore. I lost my appetite for everything. I didn't enjoy going out anymore. My husband talked to me, telling me that we were still young, and told me that we still had time to have children, but I just lost my temper whenever he said that. In my head, he didn't realize how big a deal this was to me. We were getting to our 4th year of marriage, and I felt like time was running out. I didn't care what John said about us being young. I didn't feel young. I didn't feel like we had time. Every time I saw friends, family, or even strangers with kids, it hit me in a way I couldn't explain. It wasn't just jealousy. It was a feeling that something was missing in my life, something I needed, something I deserved. John never made me feel like we were incomplete, but that only made me angrier. I wanted him to be as frustrated as I was. I wanted him to want this as much as I did, but he just kept saying that things would happen when they were meant to happen. I hated that. It felt like an excuse. It felt like he wasn't taking it seriously. I was the one tracking ovulation. I was the one counting days. I was the one staring at negative pregnancy tests every month. It was my body failing. It was my dream slipping away. I couldn't bear the pains of knowing that I'll leave this earth someday without a family of my own. I didn't want to adopt, although John's family suggested that I should, seeing that I desperately needed a child. I think adoption is a beautiful thing, and I admire people who adopt, but for me, I just feel a strong desire to have my own child. In that way, I won't feel like I have failed as a woman. So I didn't understand why such a thing would happen to me. I didn't just get it. I felt like I was cursed or something because my husband and I did everything, but it turns out to me then that I'd never get to fulfill that dream of being a mother. So I got frustrated and pissed with everything and everyone. Even my husband, John's presence became irritating to me, especially given the fact that he wanted me to just remain calm and patient. He was not the only one I was angry with. Everyone else just annoyed me for no reason. I became very unreasonable and upset, but yet John was still ever kind and ever loving, but that didn't change anything. Then I met someone. It wasn't planned. I never expected that I would meet someone who would turn my situation around. My relationship with Drew, the man I met, was not supposed to be anything special. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. We were not supposed to be close at all, or let anything happen between us. He was just there at the wrong time or the right time, depending on how you look at it. I was exhausted from feeling like my life was standing still, and he was different. Just with a few conversations we had, he made me feel like I had control. He made me feel like everything was fine, and there's nothing absolute wrong with me. And most importantly, he gave me what I wanted. I got pregnant. So here's how everything happened. John and I had been arguing a lot, mostly about the same thing. The stress of trying to have a baby, the pressure I felt, and how he didn't seem to understand how much it meant to me. I felt like I was drowning, and no matter how many times he told me we had time, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was running out of it. I was angry at him, at myself, at the situation. One morning, after a sudden argument before John left for work, I stayed home, feeling more frustrated than usual. Everything irritated me, even myself. Nothing made sense. I needed space. I couldn't just sit there all day, crying, complaining, and talking to no one. I had to get out, even for a little while. Maybe a walk would help clear my head. So I went out. I didn't have a plan. I just walked until I ended up at a bar. I wasn't even a big drinker, but it felt like the right place to be. A few drinks to take the edge off, to forget about the stress at home. I wasn't thinking about anything except wanting to feel different, even if it was just for a little while. That's when I saw Drew. He was a stranger, but talking to him felt familiar, like I had known him before, back when I was still single. Maybe it was the way he reminded me of an old friend. He was easy to talk to, familiar in a way that put me at ease. So we talked. It felt natural, effortless, like catching up on life with someone I hadn't seen in years. He made me laugh, and our conversations made me forget about everything, John, about babies, about the pressure that was weighing me down. The drinks kept coming. I wasn't counting. I just knew that I felt good, light, free. Then I started feeling something else. I don't know if it was the alcohol, but something shifted. I started noticing the way Drew was looking at me, the way he leaned in when he talked, the way his hand brushed against mine. I should have left. I should have gone home, but I didn't. By the time I realized how drunk I was, it was too late. I wasn't in any state to get home, and Drew said we should just find somewhere to stay for the night. It made sense at the moment. The hotel was right there, and it was just for the night. At first I didn't want to go with him. I knew I shouldn't, but the emotions stirring inside me were too strong. I was feeling things I didn't want to feel, and I needed Drew in that moment. I told myself I could ignore it, that I didn't have to act on it, but I did. I bought into the idea, followed him to the hotel room, and kept telling myself it was fine. I just needed to shut my eyes, sleep, and once morning came, I'd leave. That was the plan. But the moment we got inside, I knew I wasn't going to stop, because when we were alone, everything changed. I don't know who started it. Maybe it was me, maybe it was him, but I know that I wanted it at that moment. I wanted to feel something other than stress and disappointment. I wanted to feel wanted by Drew. So I let it happen. I didn't think about John. I didn't think about anything. Just heat, touch, and the feeling of something I desired and longed for in that moment. That moment with him was great. So great that I forgot that what I was doing was actually wrong until we were out of energy and fell asleep. Then I woke up. The second I opened my eyes, everything came crashing down. The room wasn't mine, the sheets weren't mine, the person next to me wasn't my husband. I ran. I didn't say a word to Drew. I just grabbed my things and got out of there as fast as I could. My head was pounding, my heart racing, and all I could think about was how badly I had messed up. I needed a cover. I needed something believable. So I called my best friend. I told her everything, not because I wanted to confess, but because I needed her help. I needed her to lie for me. If John asked, she had to say I was at her place all night, that I fell asleep and didn't realize how late it was, that I wasn't ignoring him, I just fell asleep after we had a few drinks. She hesitated at first and asked if I was okay. She asked if I wanted to talk about it. I told her no. I just needed her to do this for me. And she did. When I got home, John was waiting for me. He wasn't angry, he was just worried. He had stayed up all night. He said he had called, but when I didn't pick up, he got frustrated. I told him exactly what I had planned to say, that I went over to my best friend's place, that time slipped away, and that I didn't mean to stay over, but it just happened. Then I took it further. I told him to call her if he didn't believe me. He didn't. He trusted me. His only response was that he missed me and that's why he was upset. But he wasn't mad anymore. He just wanted me to let him know next time if I ever had to sleep over at a friend's place. Then he pulled me into a tight hug and asked that we should never argue again and I was so scared when he returned from work and didn't see me. And he loves me so much and doesn't want that to ever happen between us again, and that he was sorry. He kept saying things that melted my heart, but also at the same time they tore at it. His sweet words and apology choked me. I should have felt relieved, but all I felt was something else, something worse. But all I did in that moment was wrap my hands around him tightly and let tears fall from my eyes freely. Then I told him I love him too, and that he's right, and we should never argue again. A week later, I found out that I was pregnant. I knew immediately. I felt it before I even took the test. It was like my body just knew. And when the test finally showed positive, I should have felt guilty, because John and I hadn't had any deep, intimate moments since Drew, but I didn't. All I felt was relief. I was happy to know that nothing was wrong with me, and I was going to have a child of my own. So out of happiness that night, John and I had an amazing night. We made love over and over again. Then I gave it a thought for a few days before telling him. He was over the moon when I told him. He held me so tight I could barely breathe. I remember his face, how happy he was, and how emotional. I remember thinking that I was giving him something beautiful, that even if the child wasn't biologically his, he would be the best father. He already loved the baby, and he didn't even know him yet. For 9 months, I buried my secret. Every kick, every doctor's visit, and every late-night craving, John was there. He was talking to my belly, making plans, and dreaming about what kind of father he would be. I convinced myself that none of it mattered. I never really knew Drew, just his name. If I passed him on the street, I'm not even sure I'd recognize his face. He was a stranger, nothing more, and he could never truly be my baby's father. So he was totally out of the picture, and I was grateful for that. The baby would be John's in every way that mattered. I told myself that love was more important than blood, that this was what was meant to be. When our son was born, John shed tears of joy. I'll never forget the way he looked at him and how he welcomed him warmly into our lives, like he was the most perfect thing in the world, like nothing else was important or existed. I thought I had done the right thing. I loved that look in John's eyes that day, and I never wanted that look to change whenever he looked at our son. So I wanted to bury that secret forever. He was happy and I was happy, so why ruin a perfect marriage over some accidental one-night stand? And that's how I kept my mouth shut. For 5 years, our family was everything I wanted it to be. I was a mother, I had a son. John was the most devoted father. He adored our son. He was patient, kind, always present. Every night he read our son bedtime stories. Every morning he made breakfast. He taught him how to ride a bike. He held him when he cried. He loved him with everything he had. And then he found out. I didn't know about the DNA test. I didn't even suspect it. But one night everything changed. He came home from work late. I could tell something was off. He barely looked at me, and he barely spoke. He just went straight to our son's room and then kissed his forehead and walked out. That was unlike John. Yes, he loved his son, but he also loved his wife. He was always so happy to see me no matter how tired he was. It didn't even matter if he was in a bad mood. He was always happy, but that night he wasn't. I didn't know that my husband had secretly taken a DNA test without informing me. That felt like a betrayal, but I couldn't question him for doing that when I had done worse. The thing is, a few months before that night, John told me about his boss. He said his boss had just found out that his wife of 20 years had been cheating on him. The most crushing moment was that their kids weren't his. That story made my heart sink. I was scared and I was dying silently, but I couldn't say a word of truth to him. I remember the way he shook his head, saying he couldn't imagine what that must feel like. He wasn't angry when he said it, just disappointed. Like he didn't understand how someone could do that to the person they promised to love. Then he said he was grateful for me, that he didn't have to worry about something like that happening to him. And then he laughed a little and asked, "That's impossible with us, right?" I smiled. I nodded. I just responded with, "Of course," and asked why would I ever do that. But my heart was pounding. I felt sick. I wanted to change the subject, to brush it off, but I didn't want to make it obvious. So I held his gaze, I acted normal, and I lied. He had no idea. And I was sure I was safe because Drew didn't even know how to find me, let alone know he had a child somewhere. My lie was solid. Still sitting there, listening to John tell that story was painful. His boss's wife had done the same thing, only that her approach and intentions were different from mine. That was the only difference between us. But I wasn't like her. I had never cheated on John in our marriage. Drew was a mistake, a stupid, reckless mistake. That's all he would ever be, and it would never happen again. So when John kissed my forehead and told me how lucky he was, I felt bad, but I told myself I was doing the right thing. Nothing else meant anything or was important. So you see, everything was in place, and John never had a reason to doubt me. For 5 years, he loved our son without hesitation. He never looked at him and questioned anything. He never made any comments about how he didn't look like him or acted differently. He was just a proud father. But then, something changed. I didn't notice it at first, but looking back, I can see the shift. It started when his mother made a passing comment about how our son didn't have any of John's features. And this was after he told me about his boss's story, and that just made me feel horrible. John's mother wasn't accusing me of anything, it was just an observation. She said he had my eyes, my nose, and even my expressions, but there wasn't a trace of John in him. She laughed about it, saying genes were funny like that. I brushed it off, but I think that was the first sign of damage. Damage to our marriage. Then, about 2 months before everything fell apart, John's brother made a joke about it too. Something about how our son didn't inherit the family chin or their strong jawline. It was just another playful remark at a family gathering, but I remember how John went quiet for a second, how his smile faltered before he laughed along. I didn't think anything of it, but I guess it stuck with him, because it stuck with me too, and I was worried about everything, so most of the time, when topics like that even came up, I did my best to brush it off. One day my best friend came over, and as we were talking about everything that had been going on, she casually asked me that. What if John finds out one day? What was I going to do about it? I paralyzed for a few seconds. My heart skipped a beat, and without thinking, I snapped and told her never to say that again. And that no one knows except for the two of us, and if John was to ever find out about it, I will know that she is the one behind it, and I don't want to imagine or think that she hates me because I can't forgive such backstabbing. I kindly told her to remember that would be her destroying my marriage, and she assured me that her mouth was sealed forever. So then I put a stamp on it, and I insisted that John was the father of my son, and no one else could ever take that place. I believed it. I had to. It was at that moment that I heard John's voice from behind me. He walked into the room with a knowing smile and asked who was competing with him to be the father of our lovely son. The way he said it and the way he smiled, I almost felt like everything would be okay. I was scared he had overheard everything, but that question he just made me know in that moment that he didn't, and only heard that part. That's why he was asking to confirm if he heard right. So to quickly cover up my tracks, I went on to say that I was grateful I married him and couldn't imagine anyone else being the father of our child. He held on to my words, the reassurance that everything was still the same, and then he hugged me so tightly. It felt like the world was as it should be. But that night, after my best friend left, we had retired to our bedroom. John asked me, almost in a whisper, "What if I'm not the father?" I felt a rush of anger. My heart pounded in my chest, and I flared up, demanding to know if he suspected me and why would he accuse me of cheating. I asked, feeling my throat tighten. I started yelling that all my life I've been nothing but faithful to him, yet he still had the guts to think I could do such a thing to him, and that thought hurt me more than anything. His response was immediate, apologetic, as he quickly assured me that he didn't suspect anything and that wasn't what he intended, and that he's sorry for making that joke and he never meant to hurt me. That's how everything returned to normal. He never brought it up again. Never. So I had thought I had made it clear. I thought shutting down any joking about our son not being his would protect us. I was wrong. My response and reaction had only made things worse. It had provoked him, made him question everything. Looking back, I realize now that his boss's story and his family's offhand comments had planted seeds of doubt in his mind. And when those doubts started to grow, they unraveled everything I thought I had kept so carefully hidden. I don't know exactly when he took the DNA test. I didn't even know he had suspicions afterwards. But that night when he came home and was acting strange, that was the night the truth came to light. I had to ask him what was wrong and why was he ignoring me, and then he told me. I remember every word, how his voice shook, how his hands clenched into fists, how he looked at me with so much disgust. Even with the DNA results, he still asked me if it was true. He wanted to hear the truth from me. I couldn't lie, not anymore. The moment I said yes, it was like the air in the room disappeared. I watched and saw how everything wrecked him, wrecked us. I tried to explain. I told him how desperate I was, how much I wanted a baby, how much I wanted our family to be whole. Of course he knew those details. So I told him that he was always meant to be our son's father, that blood didn't change anything, but it did. He asked me if the other man knew. I told him no. I told him how everything happened and that I didn't know the man, and we never met again after that night. I had no idea where he was, and I didn't care. Our son was John's. That's all that mattered. But it wasn't enough. John moved into the guest room that night. He stopped talking to me. He still took care of our son, but he wouldn't even look at me. Every time I walked into a room, he left. Every time I tried to reach out, he just pulled away. I knew I had destroyed him, and that broke my heart. A week later, he packed his bags. He told me he needed time, that he couldn't do this, that he didn't know who I was anymore. I begged him to stay. I told him that nothing had changed, that he was still the only father our son had ever known. But it wasn't about our son. It was about us. He said he couldn't be with someone who had lied to him for 5 years, that now every moment we had shared, every memory we had built, was tainted, that all the words of love I had ever said to him feels empty now. He left, and now I'm alone. Our son doesn't understand why Daddy isn't home anymore. He asks for him every night. He cries when he sees his empty chair at the dinner table. He doesn't know why things have changed, and I can't bring myself to tell him. I just keep making excuses every day about him traveling for work. I don't know if John is coming back. I don't know if he can ever forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve it. All I know is that I made a choice, and that choice cost me everything. Update. So after everything that has been happening, John came back and asked for a divorce. I begged him. I told him not to let one night of carelessness destroy everything we built. I swore that it meant nothing, that it was a mistake, that I would do anything to fix it. But he didn't want to hear any of it. He said he couldn't trust me anymore, that it wasn't just about the cheating, it was about the lies, the way I looked him in the eyes for years and let him believe a lie. And even when I had the chance to say the truth, I still lied. He told me he had nothing left to say to me. I think that was the hardest part. Not the yelling, not the anger. It was the way he looked at me, like I was the devil and a danger to him. And that shattered me in unimaginable ways. No. He didn't hate our son, though. That was never in question. John was a great father from the moment he held him for the first time. I think that's why it hurts even more. He had spent 5 years loving him, raising him, giving him everything, and in the end, that never changed. Even after the DNA test, even after the truth came out, he still cared for him. But our son started choosing him over me. It wasn't like immediately, but I noticed it. I know John was always his favorite. They were super close, closer than I was with him, but he didn't always make it that obvious. But now it's like he's slapping it on my face, and I'm so not at peace with it. Because at first he would come to me like usual, calling for me when he needed something. But over time he started pulling away. He asked for John more. Since we are divorced now and we are just co-parenting, when it comes to my turn to have him, he would cry and ask to go back. John never spoke badly about me, at least not in front of him. That wasn't who he was. But he didn't have to. Our son just knew. I can't even blame him. John was stable. John was safe. John had been there every day of his life without fail. And me? I was the reason everything changed. I was the reason he didn't have his family together anymore. And the most painful part is that I hate that I did this to them. John didn't deserve this. Our son didn't deserve this. I was the one who ruined everything, and I have to live with that. I see it in John's eyes when we exchange our son. He's polite but cold. There's no warmth left, no love for me, not even a little. And our son, he barely looks at me the way he used to. I should have been patient. I should have waited like John said. We had time. I just didn't want to hear it back then. I was selfish. I let my desperation cloud my judgment. And for what? One night of feeling wanted, one night of trying to forget my pain. If I hadn't left the house that night, none of this would have happened. If I had just trusted John, if I had listened to him, our son would have been ours. But he's not. And now I don't even know where the hell Drew is. He doesn't matter. He never did. He was nothing more than a mistake, a regret I will carry for the rest of my life. But that doesn't change anything, because no matter what, I will never be able to fix this.